this feeling I can't leave. I'm working and I'm dreaming. Will you dare to give it all up and walk by my side? Do you see the road? Do you hear it's cold? Do you want a part of it? Just getting me apart now.
Hello everybody, I'm your host Jason Bainbridge and you're on State of the Nation. This week we're going to jump straight into it with an interview with Phil Barrett, who is running for a political position down there in the lovely city of Owaka. Owaka is a small town in the south of New Zealand.
The ward that we're in is the Clutha District ward. It's quite an interesting story actually, because I'm not actually running for, down here the ward would be Catlins, the Catlins ward. Now my wife's actually running for that herself. I'm running for a position in the Clutha Valley ward, which is still in the Clutha District. So Clutha Valley is just another small part of the Clutha District, and I'm running for that position. So both of us are running for a position in council.
I really have no idea about Clutha politics and how it's run down there. Is it run the same way as it is up in, let's say, Wellington or Auckland?
Oh yeah, we're all governed by the same rules and regulations throughout New Zealand. There shouldn't be any different. I think there's different ways to apply it, I guess would be the fairest way to say it. And I think what's happened this year, or the last couple of years, really, the whole democracy system in New Zealand has been altered somewhat. It's not the democracy that we grew up with. I'm only 53, but in my short time I've noticed the way that democracy's changed quite a bit, and it's definitely been altered in the last couple of years by our government to push what they need to get through. That would be the fairest way I would have to say it.
Yeah, well, they're definitely in the business of pushing an agenda, that's for sure, and it's definitely a UN-backed agenda. How is that affecting the local politicians or the local councils? Are they in agreement on it, or is it divided, or what's the status down there in your ward regarding these UN policies of climate change and going to a plant-based diet and so on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it's even though down here they'll tell you that everything's open and honest and transparent and all that sort of stuff, what I would say has happened, the meetings themselves are very, you don't get a lot, the public doesn't get a lot of feedback about what's happening in the meetings. And what I've noticed, especially with the Three Waters push that's been going through, I would suggest that the council has been divided. I would suggest that the council has been pushed in a certain direction, and I think this is what's going to show up is the councils that carry on with the narrative, with the agenda that's being pushed. They're going to show themselves up more than the ones that have fought against it, and that's what's happened in New Zealand. We've got, if you've done a few of these now, I guess, so you'll be getting the same thing. There's a few councils that have pushed back against Three Waters and have tried to do something different. Our one, unfortunately, our mayor in particular, is basically, well, he's a Labour puppet. There's no other word for it. He's pretending that he's working for the people, running around making solutions to problems that should never have existed, making himself very busy and very important doing it. But it's not, the simple fact is there's at least 75, perhaps 80% of the population around here don't want Three Waters. They don't want anything to do with it, and it's being pushed through, regardless, with all sorts of excuses on how they can't do anything to stop it and all this sort of thing. So that's what's being shown up most in our politics at the moment.
I find it very hard to believe that even local people would even stand for the whole principle of Three Waters and what it will achieve in the long run. Essentially giving complete power to our water supply to, again, the hands of the few elite, essentially, and power brokers to decide what to do with the country. What do you think the chances are of people who are feeling strongly about Three Waters and some of the other carry-on in the country of taking these council positions and local wards and local body councillors?
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. I think it's not only Three Waters though. I think that the people, like for me, the farmers and everything, they do not want Three Waters, but they haven't got a voice. They don't feel like they've got a voice at council, and now the council's kind of brainwashed them into the fact that there's nothing more to be done and it's a done deal and all this. It's not a done deal, and there's still people fighting for it. And there are people like me. There's people that are standing up and making a stand against it and saying it's not good enough. It's the democratic process hasn't been followed. The rule of law hasn't even been followed to what I can understand it. It's been bulldozed through. And yes, there are people that are willing to stand up and fight for the freedom. And it, like, just to go off it a wee bit, the biggest problem is once this goes through, and other people would have told you the same thing, that could be used as a blueprint for anything. They could just copy and paste whatever entity or whatever service they want. Instead of Three Waters, it could be education, it could be health, which they've already done. But I mean, education's the one that sticks out to me. They could just stick that in there and use this whole law, rule, legislation, whatever you want to call it, as a blueprint for doing the next thing. And it'll whack through. So it needs to be stopped before it gets too far ahead. That's my view.
Yeah, well, they've definitely made a precedent with the COVID Response Act, right? So now, the normies will be saying, oh yeah, there's no more mandates, we don't have to wear a mask anymore, we don't have to worry about vaccination anymore. But they haven't actually read between the lines, and that is that the Act gives them the power, the same power, to restart it again at any time they like. So is that something that is common knowledge in your ward? Are people aware of that? And are there other people aside from you also discussing this problem in the council?
It's not widespread, no. There are people out there who know exactly what's going on, and they're coming to the surface. A lot of people out there. I mean, you've got to remember that you're in basically a rural community. A lot of people just get on with it. They just put their head down, they shake their fist at the wind. The government's not doing any good. Rates are going up. They'll just put their head down, put their back into the work and get going, trying to keep ahead. They're the ones that they know something's wrong. I don't think they realise the full implication of what can go wrong or how badly it can go wrong. They know that they want a voice. I'm willing to give them that voice. And I know that, the next thing coming down the line is going to be the fertiliser restrictions and all the other farming restrictions that are going to be placed on us. Culling off animals so that they don't want the amount of livestock in the country. They want to plant trees, all this sort of stuff. Well, if the council can't stand up for people now, they've got no show. There needs to be people in there that will stand up and say, no, it's not good enough, and make a stand, because I know exactly where it's heading. Just follow Dutch or Sri Lanka. You'll see what's going on there.
Essentially, what they're saying with in Holland, in the Netherlands, is that there's too much nitrogen, and of course, what do plants need? That's a very good source of nutrition for plants. Nitrogen, very big in the farming industry, and you really can't have enough of it, to be honest, when it comes to growing plants. So, what do you think the chances are of a new, fresh group of farmers that can get together and start actioning regarding the situation? What do you think the likelihood of that is going to be?
Well, I follow Groundswell. I think for what they're trying to do, they're doing a great job. They don't want to be labelled as conspiracy theorists, because you've seen what's happened to people that speak out too much over here. I mean, you just get censored, you get labelled. The mainstream media will be putting hit pieces out on anyone that's going against the narrative, and they don't want to be involved in that, because even if some people think they might be a bit slow to react, at least they've got a following, they've got a good group, they're very good at getting information out. Our mayor publicly called them out at a Meet the Candidates meeting the other night that I was at, said that anyone that was following Groundswell They shouldn't really be doing that. They shouldn't be getting their opinions from groundswell. In a farming community, to say that, I thought was pretty disgusting, because it's really the new federated farmers in some ways. So for the mayor to be saying that, I think he's running a bit scared. I think he's run out of things to chuck around, so he's used that. As far as a new organisation to come on board, I don't think that'll happen. I think what you'll find will happen is, when the pressure really comes on, I think you'll find the farmers will just take it upon themselves to start protesting, and I just hope that it's not too late before they start. The nitrogen problem in the Netherlands is really, we've had people that have actually been to the Netherlands and gave us quite a good report, and the nitrogen problem is, because the farming is so intensified over there, they need to pour a lot of nitrogen on to get the farms to produce what they need. It hasn't got to that in New Zealand as much yet, although the regulations will probably beat the amount of nitrogen put on, if you know what I mean. They'll make a ruling before that sort of level of nitrogen even gets to New Zealand. So yeah, there's a lot of things coming. The SNAs are probably the biggest thing that are going to come before the nitrogen, I think, where they're going to be fencing off wetlands and telling you what you can do with it, and all this sort of drama, just taking huge swaths of land throughout the farming district that they'll essentially just take them off the farmers, or restrict the use. That's the next thing that's coming.
Well, I'm wondering then, what are the moves to be made for farmers? Do you think that they should have been moving by now? That they should have been organising and taking this, pushing back against the situation? Should they be sitting there waiting for it to get as bad as it can get until people decide to actually do something about it? Because the reason the Dutch won is because they acted before that happened. And that's the reason, because they got all the support. But perhaps, maybe perhaps, there's a cushion, possibly a cushion of information that is preventing them. I'm not sure.
You make a good point, because the people that went over to Holland, they come from Holland, they were Dutch, they went over to visit friends, and they come back and they said that over there, New Zealand, there's nothing wrong in New Zealand. They've got no news of what's going on. And even though those of us on Facebook and all that look at the Dutch farmers and know what's happening ourselves, it's not on mainstream media. It's been sort of silenced and censored. There's been the odd article, but they've played it all down. I think personally, I've been fighting. I've been on the Three Waters bandwagon for quite some time. I've got a sign permanently fixed on my ute. I've been driving around with it, I don't know, for a couple of months, I guess, just with Three Waters on it. In fact, I'm using it now as my election truck, because it's already got that on it, and I've just added to it. Now, I think myself, yes, I would have loved to have seen more farmers come out and get involved. They did a few tractor protests. They've done a few, mass type arrangements, but it sort of slowed down a bit. And then, of course, you've got with the season, with them all being on the farm, and then starting to calve, starting to milk, they're basically too busy to do it. And that's what I'm worried about, is the fact that when it needs to be done, I'm just hoping it's not too late to do anything. But I honestly think that they should have been doing more. I don't know if they realise it's as bad as if it is. Enough. I don't think enough of them realise how bad it actually is. You only have to look at, everything's sort of linked up. I started up at Marsden Point when they started closing down the refinery. Now the refinery was shut down. We cannot use the refinery anymore in New Zealand. It's been shut down. But on top of that, they've pulled it to pieces, so it can't even be reinstated. There's a lot of work to do to put that back together. I know the sense in having a refinery in an island nation, out in the middle of the South Pacific. It makes perfect sense to me. That's probably why they built the thing in the first place. This government seems to think that it isn't necessary and we can import everything, and the flow-on effect that's going to be huge. Prices of fuel, quality of fuel, and supply of fuel have already started to show themselves. So I'm concerned about that, and it's just another privatised company that we used to own, we paid for with our tax dollars. It's been now privatised, and it's been pulled to pieces, taken over by foreigners. So that's what's going to happen to our Three Waters. I can see that sticking out a mile. They're essentially privatising it by contracting out the repair and maintenance work on it to keep the thing going, which is where all the money is anyway, once the infrastructure's gone. And it's only a matter of time before that gets contracted out to overseas people chasing the dollar, and then that'll be gone, like Marsden Point, and any other state-owned enterprise for that matter that New Zealand used to own that's already gone. It just flows on, and I don't know if people realise that's what can happen, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I think the leaders in what we would call the freedom movement have been at this for quite some time now. So I guess it wouldn't be a surprise for them if they just suddenly realise that they're going after the farmers next in New Zealand. They've gone after the medical mandates, and then they went for the energy, and now they'll go for the food, and probably try and, I don't know if our New Zealand military are already involved in this conflict going over there, which is near China, the unmentionable country you're not allowed to say on any platform, both of them. But they're going to try and drag us into that as well at some stage, once they've attacked successfully the food industry. So yeah, I think that they may be wishful thinking. Maybe they would be thinking that they might get a pass on this, and perhaps it's easier. Or they could be have a strong belief in being a stoic.
Well, it could be, but I'm just not sure. That the farmers are already targeted. They're already targeted in the fact that the fuel situation has added so much cost and so much extra burden on the farms. Everything in New Zealand, because we are an island nation and because we produce things, everything has got a fuel component in it. Doesn't matter whether it's a potato in the shop, doesn't matter if it's a piece of furniture, it doesn't matter if it's your newspaper. Everything has got a fuel component. Now, once you add your fuel component onto anything, whether it's preparation, production, or harvesting of your food, it makes everything dearer. So then if the flow on of that is the cost of living goes up, your veggies go up, people can't afford to go out. So as far as targeting the farm, they haven't targeted the farmers as much as they've already put a huge cost onto everything that's going to go right through the whole economy. So there's that on top of the extra regulations that are coming down. They're talking about rewriting parts of the Resource Management Act now, which is going to put a lot more. There's all sorts of grazing permits and regulations on where you can plant winter crops, how you're going to graze your crops. You're supposed to ring up now and ask some person in Wellington who's probably never seen a farm in the middle of winter whether you can graze your cattle on it, because it might not be acceptable to them. And to me, that's absolutely ridiculous. It'd be some book smart fella that's probably never even had a pair of gumboots, let alone stood in them. And he's going to come down to a place like this that's fourth and fifth generation farmers that have lived here forever, and he's going to tell them, no, you can't put cattle in that paddock. Now, farmers, to their credit, have got a lot smarter in the last few years, and they've changed all their farming practices. They've fenced their creeks. They've looked after, they know the importance of looking after their land. That's their job. You don't go to a doctor and tell them how to fix your leg. So why would they come to a farmer and tell them how to plant a paddock or, feed your stock? There's no point in not feeding your stock. That's your job. That's your asset.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense that you wouldn't look after your asset. It blows my mind that you've got these people now fresh out of university, younger than I am, and I'm not that old. And they'll come up with a brand new clipboard, brand new truck, and a brand new salary, and tell someone that's been in the game for 40 years, oh well, you can't do this anymore because we don't like it. It's not good for the green image, or James Shaw or whoever it is in the country doesn't like it. And the district councils are the ones that are going to have to enforce this, because that's where it starts. It comes from Wellington. These directives come down from Wellington, they go to the district council, and they're the ones that have got to put these things in place. So they're saying they don't. They're saying that we're all making a big making a mountain out of a molehill. But we all know that they tell lies, and then it'll be next week they'll go, oh no, we got a directive from Wellington, there's nothing we can do. They told us we've got to do this. We didn't know we were doing this. And that's how it's gone. So I don't believe them. I simply don't believe them. They've already started plotting these significant natural areas, and the council are doing that. So the councils are doing that where they said they weren't going to touch them. So they've gone back off the word already. So I simply don't believe anything they say.
It's essentially a case of, I've seen it in business. I've been traveling and living in Asia for the past 20 years. And occasionally I come across a business person, and it could be a family quite often. And like, for example, they may not pay their bill or something like that. And so you ask the person, this is overdue. You need to pay this. And they go, oh, okay. I thought my wife was going to do that, so I'll go and talk to her. And then you get redirected to the wife and say, oh, no. It was the husband. The husband was supposed to do that. And then you end up in a ping pong between two people, right? And it's just like playing good cop, bad cop. And I think this is a case of what we're seeing. It is the case. The top echelon are playing bad cop, and the guys below them, their minions, are playing good cop, and they're playing defense constantly, and it's an untethered, endless match of ping pong and shifting the blame. And the old movie, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, it's called The Sidestep,
Well, it's actually worse than that, Jason, in New Zealand. You mentioned politics here before. We've got a system in New Zealand where you have got the higher level, the parliament, as it were, with the ministers that are running all the things, and then you've got your local body councillors, which are your district councillors, which I'm standing for. In between that, you've got a body called LGNZ, Local Government New Zealand. Now that was invented, I guess, as a vehicle to go between the bottom, your district council, to the top council. And that vehicle is supposed to speed up the process of implementing rules, or just being the communication between the top and the bottom to save a lot of time. How it should work properly is it comes down from Wellington, goes through LGNZ, Local Government New Zealand. They have their meetings and all that, and they pass that information on to the district councils. And then the district council wants something from Wellington, so they'll contact LGNZ, it'll go up, and they'll bring it up to Wellington. Unfortunately, in New Zealand now, what we've got is the same minister that is looking after Three Waters and their foreign affairs, and I can't remember what else she's got now, this Mahuta thing. We've got her, and she's also the minister for LGNZ, which seems strange because they're all in the same boat. So now we've got a minister that's running all these departments, and they've just, instead of being the vehicle between them, they've actually just started dictating what the council should do. They're missing out the middleman, coming from Wellington, going to there, and they're just saying, well, that's what we want. If you don't agree with it, that's tough. They've already put in place, which I still don't believe the Mayor's explanation on it. The directive that came from Wellington about Three Waters, that it was mandated by Wellington, meaning that the councils couldn't do anything about it, but LGNZ put a stipulation in there that the councils weren't to consult with the ratepayers over it, and they weren't to report to anyone except the Minister for the Local Government. Now, the Minister for Local Government, LGNZ Minister, is Minister Mahuta. So you've got the Three Waters Minister sets the directive to the council, and the only person you can report to is the Minister for Local Government New Zealand, which is the same person. And you cannot consult your ratepayers. Now, this council agreed with that. So this is true. This is the bit that I'm most upset about. This council agreed with that stipulation. Okay, now the Mayor's saying that consultation period was only for a very short period of time, but he's also come out in the paper and said that his hands were tied because they were mandated into the job. They might have been mandated into the job, but part of that mandate was the fact that they weren't allowed to consult with your ratepayers. Well, what is that? I mean, we live in a democracy.
Well, it's definitely not a democratic thing to do, absolutely. And I actually pointed that out last year, early in November, on a video that I made, that they could have consulted on the COVID Response Act, and actually the duck hunter himself, Mr. Mallard, he actually stated in a parliamentary session that they didn't exercise any of their powers, which they had in their toolkit. They had that in their powers to go out and bring in a third party and consult with the public on these measures, and they haven't done so. So this is just a repeat performance, essentially. And this is the way this government is working. This government is working as a privately owned, closed ecosystem that doesn't listen to anything. It's in a bubble. That's the way I can see it. And that sounds a little bit like the different types of governments that rule over dictatorships.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are doing. The thing that I'm upset about is the fact that this council down here agreed with it. They went along with it. They might have said, no, we don't like it. If you don't like something, you don't do it. That's quite simple. Like, I don't like smacking my finger with a hammer, so I don't do it. You can't say, I don't like what the government's doing, and then go along with it and then work out ways to implement it, because that's really what they have done. And then you make up lies about what you've done to help the community when you haven't. More than most of the community don't want Three Waters. They don't like the way that it's been handled. And they also don't like the fact that the information coming out is only, the council has never even got to have a vote on it. That's how ridiculous this is. This thing went through, they didn't even get to vote on it. And now we've got the mayor running around making it his crusade to fix the whole thing up by himself and taking the credit for doing all these things. He reckoned they made 73 changes to something. And like Gail Oates, she's a mayoral candidate down here. She's the only mayoral candidate that's actually running against Three Waters down here in this district. There's four mayoral candidates. That's how unpopular the mayor has become. I mean, you get 4 people. He's run unopposed, I think, for about 4 terms. All of a sudden, there's 4 people up for the job. Well, what does that tell you? People have had a guts.
That's right, yeah.
He's and she's running against Three Waters, and she is the only one with enough nuts to actually stand up and say to him, this is not right. The other ones don't, they seem to think that Three Waters is a good thing and will work alongside with whatever we got. I think it's ridiculous, and if people want to change, that's the only way we're going to do it, is get people that are willing to stand up and say. Otherwise, where's it going to end?
Well, it's never ending. That is the issue. It's become a never ending thing. Okay, well, that was really intense and really heavy, and I think it's great. You sound like you're the right guy for the job, to be honest. You sound like you know what you're talking about, and very confident about that too, and that's important.
Well, the council job is the same, I think, anywhere. You're supposed to be a liaison between the ratepayers and the council itself. You get problems put to you, or you're aware of problems, and you take the voice of the people to the council table to make sure they're listened to. If that hasn't been happening, the voice of the people has been kept right out of the council rooms in Clutha, as far as I can tell. I've talked to a lot of people, a very lot of people, in the last wee while, and not one of them feel like they've been represented by anyone. Now, I don't know whose fault that is. I don't know if it's been, if it's actually if they're not listening to the people themselves, or they're taking their voices to the council table and they're not being listened to there. I don't know. I don't know where the breakdown is, but there's a lot of people think that they haven't been represented. They've got a big building hub that's the brainchild of the mayor that's become very unpopular. It's out of place in the district. It's cost so far about $26 million. He was asked the other night what the actual cost of this thing's going to be, and he couldn't answer it, although he wants to complete it. There's a lot of people don't even want that. They didn't want it in the first place, and they can't see an end to it. So, there's other projects there's a swimming pool project that they're going to try and put together in a smaller town just down the road. They haven't even got the thing off the ground, and the budget's gone to about 4 times, or 3 times at least, what it was worth. It started at, whatever the price, how many millions it was, it's now 3 times dearer. These things need to be looked at, and they need to be, we're heading into a bit of a global slowdown. This is not the time to be getting rid of your assets and spending vast amounts of people's money and putting a burden on everyone that's trying to make a living. These things. Yeah, so that's what I want to take to that would be my job description. Keep them honest. Take the voice to the people. Take the voice of the people to the council room and make sure that they're bloody well listened to. That's the end of it.
Okay, so you're effectively going to join a big boys committee and hear what the community says and then try and push it through. What do you think the chances are, perhaps not this year, but maybe over the next few election cycles, of free people actually recapturing their local government and maybe even treating it a bit more like a democratic republic, for example, with less centralized power?
Yeah, well, I think it does. Yeah, that's right. I think there's a lot of people out there like me that are running for the chance to get back to some sort of state of democracy, because we haven't got that at the moment. When you remove the right of anyone to consult anyone else, or if you've got a plan and no one's allowed to talk about it, or you've got to hide agendas, that's not democracy. So there's people like me that have come up and they've decided that that's what they want to do, and they're standing and they're ready to fight for the rights of the people that have been left behind. I don't know how far it'll go. I think there's going to be a huge upheaval in government very shortly, and it's telling now that anyone who speaks out against the government or mentions freedom or rights or things like that, you get labelled as some sort of, well, they don't like us, do they? They don't like people that are not towing the line, and they've made it very, very clear and very hard for people to get into local government. So I don't know if it's ever going to get to a republic, although I think even if we could bring back some democracy back to the council table, would definitely be a big start, to be fair.
Absolutely. We have to start it with effort, and we have to get back to the point where you're literally representing people on key issues of the country, instead of just creating their own echo chamber and just literally dictating to people what they really need to do because government knows best. As history has proven, governments quite often do not know best, because most of them are managed by business people that like to pursue profits, and they take advantage of their position of power. Right. Well, that was fantastic speaking with you tonight. Thank you again. We are out of time. Phil Barrett, running for City Council. How can people get hold of you, and do you have a Facebook page or a social media page?
Yeah, I'm just on Facebook, Phil Barrett. You'll get me on there. There's a group that we're in, Candidates for Local Democracy Southern. That's a group that's been formed. There's another one, but I can't think what it is at the moment. I just know what the link is. That's how people can get a hold of me. I've got, there's quite a bit of stuff out there. If you just Google, just look up Facebook on Phil Barrett, you'll find me. And hey, look, honestly, I thank you, Jason, for the chance to speak out on here, because you don't get a chance to actually say what you think or what you feel. You can go to a meeting, but you don't always get your words out. We haven't been represented in the smaller wards. It's only been the mayoral candidates and that have been represented. We left to our own devices, and it's a great medium to get things out on. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I think it's very important to get to the lowest levels and start from there and regrow. We're going to have to plant seeds of the future now, because they've literally stepped us back 30, 40 years to when I was a kid, and they've added in some erroneous rules along the way, treating us like that old grumpy grandpa, you know? So
I'd agree totally on that.
Yeah.
Especially our race relations has actually probably gone back more than 30 years, to be fair, with what they've done with Three Waters, and they're setting people against each other. And
Yeah.
I think it's quite disgusting. This government's going to go down as the most damaging in New Zealand's history. I'm sure they will.
I also think that everybody should be getting involved at this point. Don't delay it. Don't wait. What are you doing? What are you doing waiting? Anybody can run for local council. Just get up there, make some posters, get out there on a podium, start talking, start getting people together. That's all we've got time for State of the Nation. I've been with Phil Barrett, running for a ward district council in Clutha. And you're on State of the Nation. I'm Jason Bainbridge. And stay safe out there and stay free.
With this feeling I can leave. I'm working